A lot of people live in their past because they consistently worry about something that happened yesterday. Some people don't really know themselves. And that's why when you ask them to describe themselves, you are in shock at their description.
Find where the egos are gathering and make yourself visible.
If I can create it on the inside, right, I can experience it on the outside. It's a universal law. For anyone who wants to be, wants to start, this whole practice of meditation, one of my first recommendations is silence.
Your consciousness is your real GPS.
When there is a problem, are you the one with the solution to that critical problem? To be light is to be a solution provider, because the solution to darkness is the presence of light.
Hey, thank you for tuning in, and this is part 2 of this full episode. So if you haven't seen part 1, make sure you watch part 1 so that you can get the full gist, because trust me, we always give you good. Trust me, you need to see part 1 to get the full context of what we are discussing. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a comment. Tell us your eureka moment. Tell us the insights that you gained from this podcast, and tell us who you'd like to see on the podcast, and we'll make it happen. Thank you for tuning in, and this is the Mountain of Influence. God bless you. Yeah. So I was saying that you didn't just, it wasn't a table that you broke. You brought down an entire building, because that was just unraveling the mystery of meditation. And I know someone now is okay, Bankole, okay, I hear you. Okay, now I understand. There is no woo-woo stuff. Can you, in just 1 minute, just give somebody insight to, the first step that they can take towards, starting? Because you've already said it, that whether you decide to participate or not, you'll be governed by the laws of meditation.
Yeah.
So, and of course, and when you are worrying, you are meditating. You are just meditating on negative things.
Yeah.
And of course, Philippians chapter 4 verse 8 already gave us the guidelines. Whatever things are true, whatever things are pure, whatever things are holy, think on these things. So, for someone out there, that is like what Bankole was saying. So whether you feel that you are meditating or not, you are by default a meditating being. So what are you meditating on? Bankole will now give you an insight, just a tip, because if you want to now know the reason, of course, you have to join our community. You have to join the SOA community. You have to join the SOA community. Yeah. But we just give you, just something, to just help you to now begin to understand what Joshua 1:8 was telling you and what Philippians 4:8 is saying. So just in shoki, like we say in Yoruba, just give them something that they can hold on to, that they can begin to explore. And then if they now want to know more, of course, they will come to our community.
Yes. So what is meditation? Meditation is very simple. It's just directing your attention inwards for 3 reasons. Number 1, to be. Right. We've been so alienated from what it means to be a human being. To just be. In this world that we find ourselves in, a lot of us are so fixated on doing as opposed to just being. There's just so much activity, and activity doesn't necessarily mean I am physically going up and down, but internally, a lot of people are going up and down, random spaces, random places, worrying about this, worrying about that, just everywhere but here, right? Missing out on the moment, missing out on being in the here and in the now, right? And we've been entrained. A lot of people live in their past because they consistently worry about something that happened yesterday, something that someone said 5 days ago, right? Something that was said 5 years ago, and they still derive an identity from that
You're
experience,
ruminating over it.
you know. So they are busy, stuck. So they are not here, they are there. They're still there.
Oh my God.
Not here. So is taking yourself back from where you were stuck so that you can be present in the here and in the now. Jacob had an encounter with God, and he said, God is in this place, and I knew it not.
I knew it not.
Go and check that scripture. I recently hit me. It didn't say God was in this place.
I knew it not.
So he had already had the experience. He had already had the experience. So it should have been said in the past tense that God was in this place and I knew it not, because it was after the experience. But he said God is. He was talking about the isness of the moment. He was talking about the nowness of the experience, and how when we put ourselves in the present moment, we put ourselves in the location where he is. The problem is we are not present in the here and now where he is with the solution to the problem. We're fixated on a past experience. A number of people are not in the now, they're in the future, trying to make predictions of the future using the lenses of the past. They have a financial problem and they are thinking of all the means through which they generate income and how it must come through this means, but yet you are praying to a God that has options that you know not of. But you are limiting him to the options that you know. So a number of times people are not, what I mean, your consciousness is you are not here. So the practice of meditation, one of the reasons is to redirect our attention to just be, to not stress over things, to just learn to be present. Second thing is to see. So some people have never really, there's a popular phrase that says, know thyself. Some people don't really know themselves. And that's why when you ask them to describe themselves, you are in shock at their description, because they've so lost touch with how they show up that they would describe themselves totally different from how every other person experiences them. And that's because they've never ever taken time to see themselves. And that's because their attention is always outside of themselves. So they've never really shown the spotlight inwards to see all those random pop-ups of thoughts that they are always romanticizing. They've never really paid attention to all the ups and downs of their energy and their emotions. Somebody says something and, there's a shift here. And you are so used to shifting that you don't realize that you shifted. Right? So it's directing your attention inwards to just see. It says of the prodigal son, it says he came to himself. I thought he was himself. How did he come back to himself? What does that tell you? He became the observer of himself. And the minute he began to see himself for who he had become, that's when the deliverance happened. That's when the change happened. Right? But so many people are they're so used to just giving their attention, and their agency to their external situations, that they don't realize that they have changed. Right? And how do you fix a problem that you do not know? Right? So that's one of the objectives, to see then the third objective is to direct your attention inwards to create. And why is this important? Because as above, so below. As within, so without. Right? If I can create it on the inside, right, I can experience it on the outside. It's a universal law, right? It's a universal law. When you click on the inside, things begin to click externally. So you want to begin to visualize and see what the future is. It says, calling those things that be not as though they were. Right? What does that mean? We read these things like stories. Let's bring it home and practical terms. What does it mean to call something that is not as though it's as though they were, not as though they are, but as though they were. So for you to call it as something that has already happened, it means it is to experience your prayers as your tangible reality in the now. Right? And to begin to see them as your current reality, right? And feel that sensation, feel that. That's what God, he says, he calls the end from the beginning. What does that mean? Have you tried to think about what that means in practical terms? Right? It means from the start of the problem, we are already experiencing the victory. So we speak from a posture and a position of victory. We are not speaking for victory. We're speaking from, because before there was a question, God already had the answer. Right? So that is really what this, practice is about. And, for anyone who wants to be, wants to start, this whole practice of meditation, one of my first recommendations is silence. Right? A lot of us are just too noisy. Anyone who wants to start on this journey, my advice to them would be to start with silence. And I was saying that silence is one of the languages of God, right? It says, be still and know that I am God, right? In quietness and confidence shall be your strength, right? I think it was either Elijah or Elisha, one of those, prophets that said, there was an earthquake and God was not in the earthquake. There was fire, God was not there. There was a wind and he wasn't there. And then came a still small voice. And there he was. How do you hear a still small voice in the midst of all that drama? Right? So you have to be silent, right? To have such an experience.
Wow. Oh my God. You guys, please, Bankole, you will drop your account number because they need to pay for this masterclass, because that was so rich and transforming on all levels. Honestly, thank you so much for sharing freely of that. And everything you said now, my mind was just tying it back to one of the things that you said at the beginning, that your consciousness is your real GPS. That is your actual location. That is your actual address, not your physical body. What are you conscious of continuously? And it's so profound because you and I are here right now. And of course, based on the conversations that we've had, our consciousness is here. But you can be in the room with a lot of other people, but their mind, like we say in Nigeria, it's a lot far. Far. You are not here. And that is just, just to paint the picture of where is your consciousness? Where is your consciousness? Wow. So amazing. As we are just, getting, rounding this all up, bringing it to a very loud crescendo, you are a business management expert. You are in the boardroom. And they're like, this Bankole Williams said, so meditation, he does all of those things, you get. And, someone out there saying, I'm also the business management consultant, but I dare not use Christian terminology inside boardroom, or I might not get business. How do you, show up as an apostle in the marketplace? And obviously, from your profile, you are one of the most sought after consultants in Nigeria. So how do you do this? Somebody out there needs this insight to be able to see you carry Jesus, like carry the kingdom matter on your head. It's not to rub it off on other people and make them feel uncomfortable, but how do you do it? Because you know how the scripture said that the children of this world are indeed smarter than the children of light. So unpack that for us and help us to know how we should show up in the marketplace as what we should really show up based on our original design.
Yeah. So it says, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works, right?
Glorify your Father.
And glorify your Father in heaven, right? So it is important to not have light alone. It is important to ensure that the light shines with intensity. It doesn't say let your light shine. It says let your light so shine. And it doesn't tell you that it should shine in the background. It says before men. And it tells you that it should shine before men so that they see you, right? And in seeing you, your Father gets glory, right? So there is something about the intensity and the quality of light that we should display. Now, what does that mean, right? If this room is dark right now and the light comes on, right, it takes over. Darkness cannot comprehend it. It takes over the space. So as a Christian who has been given an assignment in whatever sphere that you find yourself in, the question is, when there is darkness, are you the person that they can turn to? Right? When there is a problem, are you the one with the solution to that critical problem that exists within the organization? Right? So to be light is to be a solution provider, because the solution to darkness is the presence of light. Right? So what is the problem in the banking industry that you operate in that you can be the light for? Right? So it's important to one, as one who is an apostle in the marketplace, to be the most sought after solution provider. When there is a problem, are you the person who they will call? Right? Now, in providing the problem, you have to exude excellence. It says, give a portion to 7, and then, even after giving a portion to 7, give to 8. 7 is the number of perfection. So, display perfection, but go beyond that. Go beyond the display of perfection. It now says, when you've blown them away, just show them that was just the tip of the iceberg. There's more. There's more where this came from. So for instance, as a consultant, when I'm, coming up with consulting solutions or training, you can ask anyone who's ever attended any session that I run. I always start my class saying this. I say, you guys are in for the time of your lives, right? And you would see the participant, they just adjust in their chest. Really? And I'm saying that because before I walked into that class, I prepared like my life was dependent on it. Right? I planned to give beyond excellence. Right? I am giving my A++ game, because the God that we serve is a God of absolute brilliance and excellence. And if you are a child of God, they say, Ekon lekon, be a lion, only gives birth to a lion, then you have his DNA and you should show forth the way he shows forth, right? So we must learn to not just meet the expectations of our stakeholders. Your stakeholder can be your boss. Your stakeholder can be a customer. Your stakeholder can be the management of the organization. We must always seek to surpass their expectations. If their jaws do not become one with the floor when you are delivering your work, you are not yet there. The Bible says, I think it's in Luke 4:22, it says, Jesus spoke and all bore witness with him, and they were astonished with the grace with which he spoke. So Jesus's display of his calling, of his work, number one, caused everyone to be in agreement. There was no, as in all, their hearts resonated with what he said. But not only did they resonate, he says they were astonished. He gave them the wow effect. He gave them that element of shock and awe and surprise. They were like this.
Like
Every time he spoke, right? He intended to create a wow effect. His intent was to display in a way that when he was done, the people had no choice but to stand and just be like, what did I just...
standing ovation.
Do you understand? There was, and in his preparation, there was that intention, right? So in the marketplace, we must display excellence. We must display excellence, right? And in displaying that excellence, what we don't realize is that is glory. That is the exuding of glory that creates such strong impact on people. Now, when it creates the strong impact on people, people are a lot more receptive to what you have to say. Remember how we started this conversation? We said impact is what, causes people to reward you with the ability to influence them. When the impact is really strong, the capacity to influence is also really strong. So when you've had a great impact with the work because you've displayed such brilliance that has caused people to be in awe, you are in a great position to influence them. Now, when they come to you in awe, that's an opportunity to show them where the power is from, to show them, where the grace is coming from, right? I've had many of those moments where people walk up to me and say, you speak with such power and such heart and conviction, what's your source? There's just something about you, right? And those are moments to introduce people to Jesus and this powerful divinity that we all have, right? Yeah.
So in your line of work, how do you, identify opportunities that can derail you from your kingdom values? And, how do you handle it? How, do you still dabble into it or you step away from it? You understand? Like when you find yourself in a sink or swim situation.
Well, as a Christian, there are certain, expectations that God has of us, right? And, it says obedience is better than sacrifice. So it's important to align with, the moral ethics and standards that God requires of us. But even beyond that is the moral ethics and standards that within, for instance, a professional setting, right? So if you work in an organization has policies, right? And for you to work there, then there must be an alignment with the policies, and the code of conduct within, that particular institution. So if there is anything that shows up that requires you to compromise, then you have to, as a person of integrity, say no to it, right? So I've found myself in a number of those kinds of positions. I remember a few times, trying to work with one parastatal or the other, and we know how these things play out sometimes, right? And I've had to walk away from some of those kinds of opportunities. In the moment, it's not one of the easiest things to do, especially when it's maybe for an interesting sum of money that you had envisaged will be coming into the business, right? But the truth is, a good name is better than riches, right? And it's important that as one who has been sent, right, on an assignment, that you represent the one who sent you, right, in a way that pleases him. So yes, my response is to keep the highest levels of ethical standards.
Amazing. Wow. So we know that this kind of being on this kind of leadership path can get lonely. And somebody out there is saying that there's nobody around me that is kingdom minded, that is doing all of these things. How do you find your leadership company? How do you find people to go with? Because I know a bit of your tribe, and I know, so that makes it easier, in quotes, you understand, to be able to, at least when you're in that kind of environment, or when you have that kind of inner circle, that at least you don't feel like you are odd. You understand?
Yeah.
So, can you help someone out there to unpack, how to find their own people, their own kingdom? Not, it's one thing to be a Christian, to be going to church.
Yeah.
Kingdom minded, Christians, that are actually kingdom driven, like what we have been talking about, so that they don't feel isolated, they don't feel like this is going to be a lonely walk.
Yeah. So interestingly, I find that there are a number of, this conversation is a conversation that, I think it's in season and in time, because there are a number of communities out there that speak on kingdom focus. There's a friend of mine who that's his mission now, right, to raise apostles in marketplace, right? And I think that one of the things you can do is to find people who are championing such causes and join their community. And I believe that one of the ways is to register for their courses, register for their programs, right? Attend their events. That way you are meeting like minds. So go where the people you desire to be associated with go. Where do they huddle? Find yourself there, right? Where do they congregate? Right? There are events, whether virtual, physical, there are communities. It could be a WhatsApp group or something. Find yourself there. And as you find yourself there, look for opportunities to give value, right? And what do I mean? It says, he that desires friends must show himself friendly, right? So you don't wait to be reached out to. You be the one reaching out.
Go look for them.
Yeah, you go out of your way to, again, remember, you want to influence people to impact. So imagine that you volunteered to add some value to that particular event or program. You put yourself in a position where you're visible. You put yourself in a position where you now have the opportunity to be in the same space with more people, right? So find where they congregate, locate yourself there, but don't be in the background. Reach out, show yourself friendly, but also right to whatever objective that community has.
Mm, mm, mm. Amazing. Wow, that was so, I don't even know what word to use for it, but it was quite insightful, because sometimes you're just wondering, how do I do it? Well, then, yeah, find where the eagles are gathering
And
and
get,
make yourself visible. He
yeah,
who wants to have friends must first show himself to be friendly.
yes.
And that was just so profound, so profound. So, what does the future hold for your mountain of influence?
Um, well,
And how, and what would be the role of the kingdom?
for me, if you know me, I'm an educator. I love to teach. So I know that one of my roles is to educate. But I also function in business. And that's with the work that I do with management consulting, operating with different stakeholders, across various corporations, right? And what does future hold? For me, the future for me is to be, at the top of influence in the sphere that I find myself in, right? So I want to be able to shape the mindsets of Africans, right? I think that in Africa in particular, one of the reasons why we're where we are, and we're possibly not competing against the larger economies of the world, is primarily because of the way we think, right? And until we are able to change that way of thinking, until we're able to get ourselves to begin to value things that are above and not just pedestrian conversations that we have, right? That value that we place on improving our economy, improving the education sector of our people, improving the quality of work that we deliver and display, right? And circulating, it says, be fruitful, right? Multiply, replenish the earth, right? When we begin to value exporting our skill and our products and all that, right? Until we begin to do that, we will still find ourselves where we are, and a large opportunity exists for reshaping the mindset of Africans, right? And which is why I have ventured into things that ultimately will lead to behavioral change. So for me to operate at the peak where I am I have the greatest influence, the greatest positive influence over shaping the mindsets of Africans, right? I think that really for me is what the future holds, shaping the mindsets of Africans in a way that it alters our behavior so that we can be positioned, to be at the peak of the economies of the world.
Amazing, amazing. Wow, this has been awesome. Where can we find you online? Because I know some people are already like, oh my God, I need to meet this guy. I need to be in this community. Where can everybody find you online? How can
Well,
they reach you?
yeah, so my website is bankolewilliams.com. I'm on Instagram at I am Bankole. I'm quite active on Instagram as compared to other platforms. Then they can also send me an email, info@bankolewilliams.com.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And that is the end of this awesome video. I'm sure it was value packed for you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel and drop your comments below. Let us know what you are taking away from this particular episode, what resonated with you, what was the aha moment for you, what questions do you have for the guest, and of course, don't forget that we have more that we have cooked for you. So share this video with your friends, with your family, with your neighbors, with everyone that you know, and let them know the Mountains of Influence podcast is changing lives, is transforming paradigms, and it is here to equip you for the work of the kingdom in the marketplace. Don't forget, Mountains of Influence podcast is for apostles in the marketplace. Stay tuned and God bless. I am Abimbola Oliyide.